I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Southwest Magazine. My guest today is the MP for New Brunswick Southwest, John Williamson. Thank you so much, John, for being here again today.
Vicki, it's nice to see you again. Thank you.
Parliament has resumed. You've been back for a couple weeks already. I know that the Liberals have survived a confidence vote. There's been a lot going on in the first couple weeks. Tell us what's happening in Ottawa.
So that's right. We went back September 16th, so just over 2 weeks now. There was a confidence vote last week, which brought in some high drama. The government survived that with the backing of both the Bloc Québécois and the NDP. Another vote is going to happen the first few days in October as well. I suspect the government will survive that as well. It's another confidence measure that we've brought forward. We have so many what they call opposition days between now and Christmas, and so we've been putting forward non-confidence votes, and we'll see where we end up. There's no doubt that there's high drama in Parliament because of the uncertainty surrounding now the fact that the NDP and the Liberals have kind of broken up. Their pact is off. But right now, I don't think either the other parties, the third parties, want to go into an election. They're talking a good game, but when push comes to shove, they're still backing the Liberal government. Mm-hmm.
The Bloc said they're giving the Liberals until October 29th to meet some of their demands. I'm wondering if you can explain to people at home what those demands are, and also if you think they'll be met.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the opposition parties, all of us, receive opposition days, and so the Bloc Québécois would be able to put forward its own opposition non-confidence motion if it chooses to do so. So the Bloc is asking for two things from the government. The first is to bring up pensions for Canadians between the ages of 65 and 75. You'll remember a few years ago the Liberals increased the amount only for Canadians above the age of 75. So the Bloc wants to level it across the board. And while this would certainly help seniors, it is at the same time very expensive to do so. So we're going to see what the government says to that. The other issue is a bill before Parliament that walls off supply management in this country from future trade negotiations. This is a bill that has been before Parliament that would basically dictate to the government when you negotiate a trade agreement with another country, supply management is to be protected. So those are the two items they are asking for. I suspect there'll be some negotiations back and forth. I don't think the Liberals are in any appetite to go to the polls. The Prime Minister remains deeply unpopular, and he has a checkbook through the Government of Canada. So I think there'll be some negotiations. I don't know if the Bloc will be 100% successful, but I think there'll be some horse trading, and we'll see. Having said that, there is no doubt that Parliament now is much more unstable. Previously, the Liberals and the NDP were kind of on autopilot. If there's a confidence motion, the NDP will vote with the government. So pretty much game over unless a mistake happens, and mistakes do happen in Parliament. People just don't show up, they miss a vote. Now, even with these negotiations between the Bloc and the Liberals, something could happen, and the Bloc leader could say, forget it. I'm not satisfied, or another issue comes up. The NDP could say the same thing. So everyone's kind of on election readiness. Parliament now, I think, is at a state where an election, I think, is almost on the horizon. We're just not sure how far the walk to the horizon is.
Because it's scheduled October 2025 is when we expect to go to the polls.
Right.
But should Canadians be ready to hear that we're having a federal election any day now?
Well, I don't foresee it in the next few weeks, but the average kind of time a majority government survives is 2 to 3 years, and we're now beyond that. So historically, it plays in the favor of an election being more likely. But having said that, the Bloc has said it's going to negotiate. And what's another interesting wrinkle? These opposition motions. Those days are allocated by the government. So the government could play be a little cheeky and either give the Bloc its opposition day before the 29th or withhold them till the last day of the session. So there is a bit. The government has a few moves to play here as well.
Okay, and when would that last day of the session be?
It's around December 19th or 20th, so or maybe the 18th. It's about a week before Christmas normally. So, and again, Christmas is not normally a time that Canadians as well as lawmakers really want to be out pounding on doors. Having said that, just so my voters know, I'll be voting for non-confidence in the government. I'm ready to go on the snowbanks if we have to, and pound signs into the ice tundra to get them up, because I've lost confidence in this government, and I know most of my constituents have as well.
We are expecting next election that your riding will slightly change. Can you talk a little bit about what that means? Yeah,
so very briefly, because we've talked about this before, and it is a kind of exciting change and a big change. Most of York County, which is currently in New Brunswick Southwest, is going to move north into Tobique-Mactaquac, with the exception of Macadam. That's going to stay in what is currently this riding. But I'm going to pick up as well, or this riding is going to pick up both Burton to the east of Fredericton, and even larger St. John West, which includes Lancaster. So basically, we've gone to the county line. Now we're going to go right to the St. John River. So it's less territory. My square kilometers are going to go from 10,000 to 8,000 square kilometers. They're still large, but the population is going to go from 68,000 to 80,000. So I'm picking up that kind of suburban area of St. John West, and looking forward to it.
Would that change the dynamic of issues that are top priority?
It would a little bit, yes. I wouldn't say top priority. It's going to add some to the mix. Now, for example, I will now include a good chunk of St. John. Not the majority, but a piece of it. Now, I already work with Wayne Long on a number of issues around, say, the Port St. John. So there'll be a bit more of a kind of St. John gravitational pull. But that already exists in the riding, because my riding wraps around St. John, goes through Grand Bay Westfield, through the Belle Isle, all the way to Sussex. So for a lot of people around St. John, they already look into St. John as kind of where they shop and where they get things done. So it's going to change, I think, the focus a little bit. The riding's becoming flatter. The connection kind of to York County and Hanwell obviously will be gone, and so there is that pull into St. John, but that's nothing new. I mean, we saw that with the Trans-Canada Route 1, for example. That tied us both into St. John and through to Sussex and beyond a little more. So it's kind of a continuation of how this riding has been evolving the last 10, 15 years.
Before you went back to Parliament, right before you went back, there was a protest on the water here, gathering in St. Andrews, fishermen from 36,
yes.
Protesting the lack of DFO presence in the Bay of Fundy over illegal lobster poaching. Where are we at now with their talks with DFO, and are we seeing a presence come back into the Bay?
So, really important issue, and I was not at that protest because we had a national caucus meeting that weekend, and that issue was discussed by a number of Conservative Atlantic members of Parliament. Fishing communities from all over the Bay of Fundy, in Lobster Fishing District 36, which really runs from St. Stephen all the way up to Alma, New Brunswick, converged at in St. Andrews to protest the Department of Fisheries and Oceans' lack of enforcement. Here's the rub. There is poaching happening in the Bay. Some of it is domestic. Increasingly, we discovered that Maine fishing boats are coming over as well. Now, Mainers always test the line a little bit, but it's gotten to the point now where traps are being hauled from Canadian waters and they're being landed back in Maine. These are Canadian resources that are being stolen. Now, not to say I'm highlighting that over domestic poaching. If it's illegal, it's illegal. It needs to be enforced. The enforcement officers in 36 are currently on a walkout. They feel they're not being supported by the department. They're not being given the tools and resources to do their job. And the Fisheries Minister doesn't seem to be taking this seriously. That is why fishing families, communities protested. I think it was a great display of solidarity that these men and women put on in St. Andrews. It was large, it was peaceful, and I think it got a lot of attention. we went into Parliament the next week, the weekend after, the Monday and Tuesday after the protest, and raised it in the House of Commons, the lack of enforcement, not just lack of enforcement, there has been no enforcement in LFA 36 in the last couple of weeks. And over 2 or 3 days, I think the minister in the department got the message, and then at the end of that week, we began to see Coast Guard vessels. The DFO boat from Grand Manan were in the water, and a helicopter from the Coast Guard from PEI was here as well. Excuse me. So, and we also noticed miraculously the fishing boats in the area that were illegally fishing disappeared as well. If you enforce it, that will send a message to poachers that not only are you going to lose your gear, you could well be arrested. The challenge going forward is how long is the enforcement going to remain here? I don't think Grand Manan's probably thrilled about losing its enforcement boat. They'll want it back. And the resources now are stretched thin, and I suspect other fishing areas will be pressing the government to do the job there. So this is far from over. We need the Fisheries Minister to deal with, to negotiate and get enforcement officers back to work so the waters in our area are enforced and the resource is protected.
I spoke with Amanda Johnson, who is the spokesperson for Funny North at the protest, and her big concern is that if there isn't enforcement, that we could see the fisher people take this into their own hands by cutting illegal traps, but that could, as we know, lead to potentially violent situations on the water. Are you feeling that there is a resolution coming? So,
okay, first of all, they wouldn't cut them, they would haul them. There's a big, because of the whales, and fishermen are very aware of that. That would escalate it, and I have urged the fishing community to do everything but get arrested. Right now, we have the Liberals on the run. The minister is not doing her job, and I don't know if she's going to take it seriously. They have turned a blind eye here. I mean, prior to them sending all of these vessels, they were telling us in Parliament the waters are being enforced. It was simply not true. So there's a problem here. There is no enforcement. We want to see the laws enforced on the water as well as on the land. So I don't know what they're going to do. The fisheries, they're currently a mess in our area, which is why I think the fisheries minister should be fired by the Prime Minister, and someone who can do the job should be put in place. Now, the Prime Minister has a terrible record. Minister Lebouche is Justin Trudeau's 6th fisheries minister. Others have just not been up to the job, and I don't think she is as well. And we see this when, for fishermen and fishing women, because there are some fishing women out there as well. It's equal opportunity. It's hard work. I've been out a couple times, and I know how hard it is. For them to come here, take a day, the cost of bringing their boats up is not insignificant, and to get active like this takes a lot. And so that just shows you, I think, the desperation that these families are feeling now, because if we don't protect the lobsters when they're in the state they're at now, and protect that area for the fishing season, the haul could be much lower this year. It's a resource that we protect for a reason, and with the poaching that's going on, we're endangering it. Plus, of course, it's theft, and it works against our national interests. So there's good reason to be out in the water, and I do hope it's resolved. But we're going to keep watching it, and if necessary, we'll bring it up again in Parliament.
I will say one of the people we interviewed was a woman named Spiro, who's a 4th generation fisher person, and again, that's what she's worried about, is that she won't have this if her children want to go on and do this same career. It's not just about their own catch.
That's right.
It's about the population of lobster in general.
Like, if you go down to any wharf, and I think people will be surprised that it's usually the fishing community itself which is calling for DFO to be on the water. Why? Because they're doing the job legally, they follow the rules, they want to protect the stock, and they want to make sure it's there not only for future seasons, but for future generations. It's a remarkable industry that we have in this area, a product that is in demand literally around the world, and that provides income to families all over rural New Brunswick. And we would be fools to ruin it because of bureaucrats and officials in Ottawa that can't do their job and police this area properly.
Now, on the flip side, same topic though, DFO has decreased the herring quota. And this is affecting, particularly in our area. We saw Connors Brothers lay off 20% of their staff in Blacks Harbour due to this reduction. DFO says it's because the population is critical. What's the feeling in Blacks Harbour right now? How are we adjusting?
Oh, it's not good. Again, losing that many workers. Connors is the last processing plant in North America. For 20 years, they've been doing everything they can to remain in Canada. It'd be easier for them to just freeze the product and ship it down to the Caribbean or to Eastern Europe where costs are lower, but they're committed to Blacks Harbour and they have been fighting to stay there. I don't believe this decision is based on science. We have former scientists from DFO who are now speaking out saying that the stock is there. This is a huge cut that isn't necessary. But if I'm wrong, I'd ask the department to show us what their decision is based on. Because I think it's one that is political. It's not one that's based on science. So an issue that we brought up as well, I think the Liberals, for whatever reason, are digging their heels in on this, but this just shows when Ottawa is making bad decisions, it affects local communities, and Blacks Harbour is just one of them.
And just for clarity, what would be political about the decision to reduce the quota?
Yeah, so they're basing it on the so-called precautionary principle, which is in vogue in environmental circles, and you do have environmental groups that are calling for the catch to be limited in Atlantic Canada. These are the same groups that are pushing these marine protected areas, which would remove not only scalloping and aquaculture, but also potentially lobster industry. We're up against environmentalists that want to basically turn our bays into protected areas. And we need to find the balance both between environment conservation, but as well traditional fishing that has happened in this area since long before even Canada was a country. So this is really a clash of ideology. It's often U.S. money that's coming in to fund these environmental groups, and they're the ones that are pushing this narrative with the fisheries minister, and it is the wrong direction for this country. Again, our resources are a source of strength in this country. They create powerful paychecks, and if we begin to restrict the fisheries for no good reason except we just want to create these marine protected areas, we'll have a lot of families and communities that are on welfare as opposed to being out there every day working.
Mm-hmm. And how is Blacks Harbour rebounding? What is the strategy going forward? It is hard when we look at a community that on a lot of levels is a company town, and when you deplete that workforce just so immediately, it has a devastating effect on the whole community.
So 2 points to say on that. One, I think the company is hoping for better days. I think they're hoping for a change in government that's going to look at this and come back with a better decision that reflects what's happening out there. So the company was very clear. These job cuts happened because of decision the Trudeau Liberals made. So I think they rearranged things. They haven't closed the plant, but I think they're hoping they'll get a second look when a Conservative government is in office, should that happen. As for the people that are impacted, my hope is that because we're in a tight labor market, workers are in short demand, and believe me, I know firsthand the workers at Connors are hard workers. A lot of the most productive workers there are young women. They work exceptionally hard, and sadly they're going to be the ones who lose work. But I hope that other industries in the area, whether it's aquaculture or other industries that need workers, will be able to hire them. That I suppose is the only silver lining I see. This is not job cuts related to a worsening economy. These are job cuts that happen because of bureaucratic decisions. The economy elsewhere remains relatively strong in terms of the labor market, so I'm hoping most of these workers will get picked up and find work relatively soon.
I also wanted to ask you about a post you made regarding the national anthem in local schools. Something you said that is not being sung regularly anymore. Can you shed some light on that? I wasn't able to contact schools on Friday to find out what's happening.
So I began to get some notes from parents on Campobello last week about the national anthem not being played in the school on Campobello. So on Friday, first my office called the school to find out what was going on, and the first response we got was from someone who just said they'd prefer not to answer the question, and we needed to speak to the principal. Well, that sent a kind of a little ping to me that if someone doesn't want to answer the question, there's probably a reason for that. So I called the principal back shortly thereafter, left my message and said I would like a call back on this because I'm concerned about it, and I also would like to be able to respond to the public on it. Later that afternoon, I did get a call from the district, and they confirmed two things. One, that the anthem has not been played at Campobello, which is actually required by a provincial act. And two, I asked about other schools in the area if the anthem was being played as is required, and I did not. The person I spoke with could not confirm that it was. So this is very troubling for a number of reasons. Not only is it a provincial requirement that anthem be played, for millions and millions, the vast majority of Canadians, the anthem means something. It's a symbol of our country, the freedoms, the sacrifices, and it's something that ties us all together, bonds us as communities from coast to coast. And for the anthem not to be played, frankly, for any reason, is unacceptable. So I really wasn't satisfied with the answer. It's something I'm going to keep looking into, and I hope school administrators will have more to say about not only what happened on Campbell and why, but is it happening elsewhere as well. I'm led to believe it is from responses to a post I put on Facebook. There are schools elsewhere in New Brunswick Southwest as well as in Fredericton that are not playing the anthem on Wednesdays, and they're inserting instead an anthem, Indigenous anthem. But my question is, well, do both. Like, this is Canada. The anthem binds us from coast to coast. It should not be cut out willy-nilly, and if it is, we should know why.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely, I'll look into that as well and see what's happening in our community. As we look ahead to the future, what can we expect this year in Parliament? What's on the horizon?
Well, I think for the government, it's a matter of both trying to get its agenda back online. The two big issues that I see that are constantly coming up, whether I'm out talking to people or through emails and phone calls, remain the economy and affordability, as well as crime. And those are two issues that we're not going to stop pushing in Parliament. You know, in 8 short months, the Liberals are going to raise the carbon tax again, which is outrageous given the cost of everything in the country. And as we make fuel and energy more expensive, it just drives up the cost of everything. Similarly, it's time for some judicial reform as well, to ensure that police have the resources to go after the repeat violent habitual offenders. I mean, I know there's a lot of pressure on the RCMP to do more, but when they're spending all their time arresting and rearresting the same people over and over again, because the Liberals have passed laws that require the courts to let people out or punish them as least as possible. Well, we've ended up where we are with people in our communities who we know are committing crime time and time again, and the police just aren't able to prosecute them to the full extent of the laws because they're held up by laws that are passed in Parliament. So these are things that we're going to change in office whenever that election happens.
We have a provincial election coming up. I know always when it's provincial election time, the Campobello Ferry becomes a topic that we in the St. Croix riding love to talk about, because I'm going to be hearing from a lot of the candidates about this year-round ferry topic that has been going on for years, whether or not Campobello needs a year-round ferry. Where's the federal government at with their ability to meet the province part way to make this a reality?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Over the years, this is an issue that I have pushed in Parliament at the federal level about what the federal government could do. And at first I was told, The answer is nothing. The federal government does not fund ferries within provinces. But I decided to check this out. So I dug through the public accounts and discovered that, lo and behold, for the last 30 years, the federal government has funded ferries in British Columbia, BC Ferries. And these are ferries that run within the province. So my view is what's good for the goose is good for the gander, or rather what's good for British Columbia is good for New Brunswick. Now that's not to say the feds would come in and build it and run it and all that, but they've proven to be financial partners in British Columbia. So whoever wins, whoever the MLA here is in St. Croix, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and work with them should the province as well as the island decide they want a ferry. But that's it's a conversation I know we've had over the last couple of years, and it's one that we have to have with both the mayor and council of Campobello as well as the provincial government. So it's something that I'm prepared to keep working on. I think I've done some good investigations, investigative work, and discovered this little wrinkle. And I'll say this as well because I found it funny. When I raised this, I was told by officials, well, this was a legacy program, as if it had been walled off and wouldn't apply to anyone else. But I'm like, there's no such thing as a legacy program in the federal government. The federal government provides funding, and in this case to BC Ferries, and to kind of wall it off and say that's unique. That's not how this country works. Generally, we have federal programs that work from coast to coast, and it's up to provinces and members of parliament to make the case for their region. That's what I'm going to keep doing.
Well, I appreciate all the time you bring to coming in here to giving us updates.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate it. It's great to communicate, talk to you, and just let voters know what I'm up to a little bit, and just give them the state of what's happening in Parliament.
Okay, well, I look forward to sitting down with you again in about 6 weeks' time.
Perfect. Thank you.
My guest today has been the MP for New Brunswick Southwest, John Williamson. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.